Would you risk your life for a piece of silk? For the elite of ancient Rome, color wasn't decoration, it was power. One wrong shade, one wrong stripe, and suddenly you weren't just embarrassing yourself, you were stepping into a political minefield. Picture this. A young Roman walks through the Forum during a crowded festival. He's nervous, but trying to look confident. Draped over his shoulder is a toga with a faint streak of purple dye. To him, it's just color. To everyone else, it's a signal. And suddenly, the crowd is staring. Because in Rome, clothing worked like a public legal code. You didn't need to hear someone speak. You didn't need documents. You saw the cloth and instantly knew who they were, what authority they had, and whether you should step aside. That's the world hidden behind those white marble statues we see in museums. We imagine Rome as a city of plain white stone, plain white robes. But the real streets of Rome were loud with color, and every color meant something. Start with the basic toga. The plain white toga, called the toga pura, was the baseline for Roman citizenship. If you were a free adult male citizen, that was your uniform. It separated you from slaves, foreigners, and everyone outside the civic system. But Romans didn't stop there, because the moment politics entered the scene, the cloth changed. Political candidates took their togas and rubbed them with chalk until they shone bright white, almost glowing. The effect was dramatic. People could spot them from across the square. That's where the word candidate actually comes from. Toga candida, the shining white robe of someone asking for votes. But the most important toga wasn't the brightest. It was the one with the purple stripe, the toga praetexta, a single border of purple running along the edge. That stripe told everyone around you, you carried authority. Magistrates wore it. High officials wore it. Even freeborn Roman boys wore a smaller version of it until they became adults. Why? Because that stripe functioned like visible legal protection. See someone wearing it, and you knew immediately. Behave carefully. In crowded Roman streets, where thousands of people pushed past each other, that tiny line of color worked faster than any announcement. It was a signal, a warning, a declaration. And if you look closely at Roman culture, you'll notice something fascinating. These colors weren't just visual, they were sensory, because the most powerful color in Rome had a smell, purple, not just any purple. Tyrian purple. This dye came from sea snails living along the Mediterranean coast, tiny predatory mollusks called murex. Workers collected thousands of them and crushed a small gland inside each shell. Then they boiled the glands for days under the sun. The mixture fermented, it darkened, and it released a smell so strong people compared it to rotting fish. Imagine an entire workshop full of that odor drifting through a harbor city. Now, imagine someone walking into a crowded street wearing cloth dyed with that pigment. Before you even saw them, you smelled them. Power literally had a scent, and that smell told you something else. Money. Because producing the dye was absurdly expensive. Thousands of snails for a tiny amount of pigment. That made purple one of the most valuable colors in the ancient world, which meant the government eventually stepped in. Certain shades of purple became restricted. Imperial purple, the deepest, richest tone, was reserved for the emperor himself. Wearing it without permission could be treated as a political challenge. not a fashion mistake, a challenge. And in Rome, challenging power rarely ended well. That's why the kid walking through the Forum with a purple stain on his robe would start sweating, because the crowd didn't know whether that stain was accidental or a statement. Now think about how this worked in everyday life. You're in a marketplace, thousands of people, noise everywhere, vendors shouting, citizens arguing, messengers pushing through the crowd. Then suddenly, people start stepping aside. Why? A magistrate is approaching. No guards shouting orders, no announcement, just the toga. The purple border appears, and the crowd shifts like water around a stone. That single stripe carries authority strong enough to move bodies without words. Clothing wasn't style, it was infrastructure. A system that told people exactly how to behave. The Romans loved systems like that. They built laws into architecture, rituals, ceremonies, and clothing. Even mourning had a color. During funerals or times of public grief, Romans switched to darker garments called the toga pulla. The dark cloth immediately told everyone something was wrong. Someone had died. Or the state itself was in mourning. You didn't need an explanation. You saw it, you reacted, and once you start noticing these signals, something strange happens. Modern life suddenly looks very Roman. Think about it. Uniforms, police badges, judges' robes, doctors' coats, corporate suits. They all function the same way. Visual shorthand for authority. Signals your brain reads before anyone speaks. The Romans simply perfected it earlier than anyone else. And they pushed it further. They turned color itself into a hierarchy. White for citizenship, chalk white for ambition, purple borders for authority, dark cloth for grief, imperial purple, which brings us back to that nervous kid in the Forum. Eventually, someone important notices him. A magistrate glances down at the purple smear on the boy's toga. The crowd holds its breath. Was it deliberate? Or just dye from a workshop that stained the cloth? For a moment, the entire meaning of that color hangs in the air. Then the magistrate waves him away. A mistake. The boy exhales, and he learns a lesson every Roman understood from childhood. In Rome, color wasn't decoration. It was power you could wear. If you want a simple way to remember the whole system, think of 3 signals: smell, law, stripe. Purple smelled because it came from sea snails. Purple was restricted because it represented political authority. And the stripe of the toga praetexta told the crowd exactly who had the right to command it. Those tiny details, scent, color, fabric, controlled how millions of people moved through the Roman world. Which is why the next time you see one of those perfect white Roman statues in a museum, remember something. The real city wasn't white. It was loud with color, and every shade was a message.